Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you live. Our webinar today, organized by the Center for Studies on New Religion and Human Rights Without Frontiers, and entitled Eradicating Violence Through a World Prayer Day and Solving the Taizhimen Case, is quite peculiar. The webinars of this precious series on the Taizhimen case as always occur on some day of observance designated by the United Nations. In fact, today is an important UN Day of observance. It is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. So we celebrated addressing violence against women of Taizhimen, but we also wanted to underline a second important event. It is the proposal designating October the 16th as World Prayer Day made by Dr. Tong Tao-tse, the Chief or Grandmaster of Taizhimen. The two things go hand in hand. In the intention of Dr. Hong, a World Prayer Day is the key to a peaceful world. And of course, there cannot be such a thing as a peaceful world if violence, especially the very obnoxious form of violence, which is violence against women, is not eradicated. So first, women and violence. The most ancient treatise on education in France was written by a woman. Medicine was practiced regularly by women in the 13th century. In the 12th century, there were religious orders gathering both monks and religious sisters under the authority of an abbess, a woman. Women administrated property, held top positions in professions and commerce, as well as in intellectual life and even in politics. Women were writers, educators, sovereigns. Many of them enlivened the royal courts. In sum, the whole history of law and social customs show the evolution and the importance of the power of women in all levels of society. In fact, women were highly regarded and consulted for advice because they were considered competent, responsible, and influential. This is what French historian and archivist Regine Pernod documents through tens of examples in her scholarly works, chiefly but not only La Femme au temps de cathédrale, published in 1980 and translated into English as Women in the Days of Cathedrals in 1998. Pernod was a specialist in what is called the Middle Ages in Western Europe. So her description of the social esteem and dignity of women focuses on medieval times. Now, the Middle Ages in Europe were a religious time. Christian culture permeated every aspect of private and public life, from literature to politics, from economics to education. We can then aptly say that the high consideration and total respect for women in those times is a product of a religious civilization, deeply rooted in a precise theological ground, as well as based on a distinctive concept of the human person. Many more problems, in fact, arose when the religious tract of Western society started decreasing. Women lost their preeminence in society, and discrimination and devaluation came rapidly in as a common cultural feature. Violence against women was just behind the corner, prepared and somewhat cherished by a new anthropology. Like secular society, which lost esteem of women, women are treated badly by those cultures whose anthropology, philosophy, and theology are built upon a profound separation between males and females. Rapidly, women become mere servants or even tools in the hands of men, and men can totally make of them whatever they like. Forced marriages, servitude, disrespect, sterilization, selective abortion based on sex, rape, mutilations, all forms of violence against women are then tolerated and even promoted. And violence against women has become and is so serious a problem to push the United Nations to summon the attention of the entire world on a special day like today. Let me now quickly turn to prayer, our second topic today. The Mad Max series is a popular franchise of dystopic movies. The first movie was released in 1979. The latest, entitled Mad Max Fury Road, came out in 2015. The last survivors of a post-apocalyptic world fight for survival against a tyrannical villain and his fanatic warriors. Well, this movie touches upon our twofold topic today. In the movie, the evil warriors are affected by a genetic disease and can live only on the blood they get from the last remaining full human. Among the last humans, there is a small group of beautiful women called the Five Wives. They are the spouses of the chief villain, but there is no room for love there. They exist only to breed new people, hopefully healthy, to serve in the army of the chief villain and fight a perpetual war for the control of the last natural resources and energy in a wretched world. These women are only makers and treated as sexual slaves. Now, the Five Wives managed to escape the tyrant and struggle hard for survival, protected by the few positive heroes of this story. At the heart of this battle for life, when everything is hard to bear and possibly lost, one of the Five Wives, whose name is Toast the Knowing, starts doing strange gestures. One of the other women, whose name is Bidag, bewildered, asks her, "What are you doing?" "Praying," replies Toast. "To who?" asks again the dad. "Anyone who is listening," says Toast. The 1759 Treaty del Gran Mezzo della Preghiera, translated in English as Great Means of Salvation and of Perfection by the Roman Catholic Neapolitan Saint Alphonsus Liguori, it focused on the idea that prayer is necessary for salvation and that those who don't pray condemn themselves to hell. Of course, these are very hard and sententious words, but all believers know it. The truth of these words doesn't depend on the fact that Alphonsus is a Roman Catholic saint. In fact, every faith and spiritual movement know how much that is true, and even if prayers and the recipient or recipients of prayers are different. Anyone who's listening, says the text. We from different religions and spiritual ways all pray to anyone who's listening. Our faith may know the name of the recipient or recipients of our prayers, or alternatively, our spiritual tradition doesn't have a name for that. But all believers pray because they know how much important prayer is. In his treatise, St. Alphonsus adds another important element. Prayer is not an end. It is a means to obtain a goal. It is a question put to someone, anyone who's listening, who can answer. The Latin language has two words for questioning. Querere and petere. They have a difference. Querere means asking for knowing something, while petere means asking for obtaining something. Prayer uses the latter. It asks to obtain. To obtain what? Ultimately, it asks to obtain the ultimate goal of life, salvation. Call it, phrase it, frame it as you like. We all agree on its substance. In Mad Max Fury Road, when asked by the principal character what she is ultimately looking for, a former villain turned good with saving the 5 wives replies with only one word, which is the key to the whole movie and possibly the entire franchise: redemption. Now, salvation and redemption start on this side of heaven when humans make effort to build a better world for everyone. We call it a world in peace. Dr. Hong and Taiji Men know that a world in peace is a world with no violence, especially against the violence against the central characters of a civilization, women. Why they know it? Because Taiji Men has experienced violence, and women of Taiji Men have experienced violence. Dr. Hong and Taiji Men search peace through prayer. Why? Because they know that if you want to get something done, you need to ask where you can be answered. We then propose a World Day of Prayer as an antidote to violence against women and to every form of violence, including administrative violence against all religions. This is the topic of our webinar today. I thank you for your attention. These few words of mine aim just to introduce the topic. The first session of it, with important papers presented by distinguished panelists, will start right after an important video that we are now going to see together.
I don't know who you are, but I can detain you. I'm not cooperating with you. It's her I wanted.
My colleague.
He wanted to check my ID. Let's see what he is holding. Why was he stopped by the police? What is he holding in his hands? I'm just holding this.
Did we violate any of
But
their
I'm
rights?
scared.
What rights of yours
You're
am I
really
violating?
scared.
What rights of yours am I violating?
But we're not breaking any laws here. We violated any laws?
Then we'll choose an older one. The police power exercise act. I have to interrogate you.
我们没有影响啊。
tell you the charges against you during the interrogation later, okay? I'll tell you when I arrest you in a moment. Don't worry.
Without a search warrant or the consent of the owner, the police searched a bag on the ground which did not belong to Ms. Huang. Finally, after looking for the poster, the police forcefully stuffed a poster into Ms. Huang's hands and arrested her without charging her with a crime.
Oh, my brain's almost right now. I was surrounded by a group of police officers. Very scary.
It was such a minor case, yet Miss Huang ended up going to the ER. How could you abuse your power to such an extent?
Hajiman was found not guilty of tax evasion or any other
All right,
charges.
thank you all.
But now the government still robbed the people of their property. Is it okay to raise a placard?
I don't know the details, but please don't. Look, so many people are watching. Let's talk in private.
Couldn't we get inside?
Why we citizens can't go to the cultural center?
Our land has been seized. What else can we do?
agree, we
Our
agree.
home was taken away.
He fell! How could you hit him?
No one hit him.
Don't blame me.
Shouldn't you call 911?
This is unbelievable.
What are the cops
Call
doing?
an ambulance. Call an ambulance. Why won't they call?
He fell himself.
No, it did not.
So you won't have him because he fell himself?
Don't blame me. Don't blame me.
You pushed him. He stopped me when I was taking a walking class on 1914 Creative Park today just because I was wearing this t-shirt. I don't know why. Please tell me which law I broke.
We are following the special investigation order now.
Did you record it?
Go ahead and take
You
photos.
pressed your tummy against me again. Did you record it?
Go ahead and take
You
photos.
pressed your tummy against me again.
We need your cooperation.
Don't push me.
We need your cooperation, please. We need your cooperation, please.
We want taxpayers' right. We want taxpayers' right. We want taxpayers' right. We want taxpayers' right.
Slow down, slow down, slow down, stop.
True tax and legal reform. Save Taiwan with conscience.
I think now everyone understands perfectly what does it mean, violence against peaceful Taijuman people, and especially peaceful Taijuman women. It is staggering what we just saw, and this is not fiction, as I mentioned. I was touching upon popular entertainment movies. This is the reality happening in a democratic country like Taiwan. We are now ready to start the first session of our webinar today. And it is my pleasure to give the floor to Dr. Massimo Introvigne. He is the founder of the Center for Studies on New Religions and the editor-in-chief of Bitter Winter magazine, which I serve as director in charge, which is published under the auspices of Chesno. Professor Introvigne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marco, and I hope you all hear me. And I will try to ask and suggest an answer to the question why exactly on a day which the United Nations indicate to us to reflect on violence against women, we are proposing as a solution or as an antidote Dr. Hong's idea of designating October 16 as World Prayer Day. In fact, there have been proposals for a World Day dedicated to prayer since the 19th century, when American Christian women created a movement to pray for Christian missions. The Women's World Day of Prayer is now simply called the World Day of Prayer. It is on March 3, and I would like to tell those who do not know it that the next international celebration of this World Day of Prayer will be in Taiwan on March 3, 2023. But although it's now opened to everybody, this World Day of Prayer clearly is a Christian day, which has a confessional Christian origin, and so far it has not been endorsed by international institutions. But why exactly international institutions should now endorse Dr. Hong World Day of Prayer? And I would like to meditate on this by starting from an image I hope to be able to show you, even if I see some problems in this, but perhaps we can do from my text, because in my text is hidden an image. Let's see. That's an empirical way, but now you probably see the image. And this is a famous painting by Rembrandt. You can admire at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And its title is Aristotle, the philosopher, on the right, contemplating a bust of Homer, the Greek poet, on the left. But what you immediately see in this painting is that Aristotle on the right is wearing a quite heavy golden chain. And the golden chain is what I want to discuss with you today. This golden chain has been interpreted by art historians in different ways as a reference to how precious, like gold, the poetry of Homer is, and even as a statement by Rembrandt on the complicated relationship between money and art. But these interpretations are not exact, because as German art historian Herbert von Heinem first noted in 1952, and his American colleague Margaret Deutsch-Carroll discussed at length in 1984, the reference is quite obvious. At the time of Rembrandt, and perhaps unfortunately a little bit less today, every cultivated European was supposed to know the Iliad, the epic poem attributed to the perhaps mythical Homer. And at the beginning of Book 8 of the Iliad, there is a discussion between Zeus, the supreme god, and some lesser gods. And Zeus tells the lesser god that he should win any argument just because he is the stronger. And to prove he is the stronger, he invites them to suspend a golden chain between the earth and the sky, entrust one end of the chain to Zeus, descend to the earth, and pull the other end all together. And Zeus explained that all the gods gathered together on earth will fail to pull Zeus down from the sky. He will be the one, on the contrary, able to pull them up from the earth with the golden chain, along with all the lands and seas of the earth. Now, the rather prosaic modern interpreters have noted that this is just a transposition of a children's game, popular both in ancient Greece and throughout the centuries. There are two teams of children, and each team tries to pull a rope to its side. But the point is that readers of the Iliad found in the golden chain speech by Zeus an esoteric meaning since the Greek times themselves. Neoplatonists, Orphics, Hermetists all found in the golden chain speech deep mysteries and even astrological secrets. Basically, this tradition never stopped. The Latin expression aurea catena Homeri, the golden chain of Homer, became proverbial among Western philosophers. At the time of Rembrandt, there were a good dozen of recently published texts discussing the golden chain, including the Iconology of Cesare Ripa, was just published, a manual on images most painters knew. German esoteric author Anton Joseph Kirchweger will publish his popular book on alchemy, Aurea Catena Homeri, in 1723. That was 70 years after Rembrandt's painting, but he summarized their ideas that had circulated well before. Now you may ask, what does the golden chain of Homer have to do with the World Day of Prayer? Well, generations of European intellectuals, esoteric masters and philosophers had interpreted the golden chain for some 2000 years when Rembrandt painted as a statement that all things in the universe are connected. Zeus in heaven and the gods on earth may pull the same rope because that rope, the golden chain, connects all the universe. The world is not a chaotic mass of elements with no relationship between them. The world is a harmonious whole, if only we are able to see the normally invisible golden chain that represents its intimate unity. Rembrandt was a devout Christian, familiar with the Bible and theological works, and as such, he might have learned that an early and immensely popular Christian theologian had interpreted Homer's golden chain as a symbol of prayer. That theologian was known as the pseudo Dionysius the Areopagite because he signed with the name of Dionysius the Areopagite, a disciple of Paul the Apostle in the 1st century, but he lived around 500 CE, so it was not that Dionysius. The mysterious author was part of the Neoplatonic school that both referred to the ancient Greek philosophers Plato and reinterpreted him. It was thus natural for him to see in the prayer a communion with the deep unity and interrelation of the universe, which was what the golden chain was all about. The writing of the pseudo Dionysius had been influential on Dutch religious authors, so Rembrandt might have read them, but even if he didn't, he would surely have interpreted the golden chain notions in accordance with his own Christian spirituality. So in the golden chain, we have a key for a non-sectarian approach to prayer. To take the golden chain in our hands, which coincides with prayer, means to become attuned to the unity of the universe, to recognize that everything is connected and that violence cannot have any legitimacy because it breaks this order and will eventually backfire on ourselves. This prayer is not a monopoly of any religion, and while it is deeply spiritual, it can also be joined by those who do not believe there is a God. Dr. Hong is inviting us to take the golden chain, to surrender ourselves to this awareness of unity, is to renounce violence and to call for the overcoming of all injustice resulting from violence, including the Taijimen case. In the dramatic situation it finds itself in, the world has a golden opportunity to grasp the golden chain and rise to conscience and justice. This is why many should enthusiastically say yes to Dr. Hong and should not miss the opportunity of the World Prayer Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Introvigni, for once more showing how art, history of art, even mythology, can teach us everlasting truths and a deeper understanding of the human condition as related to the topics we are touching today. It's always so important to draw lessons from the things we are totally immersed in, like art, sometimes philosophy, mythology, and all these things. Thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Willy Fautré, Director and co-founder of Human Rights Without Frontiers in Brussels, Belgium. Willy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marco. Last month, I was invited to a hearing by the European Parliament in Brussels to share our expertise on the issue of violence against women as an abuse of power by men in a dominating position. It is a worldwide phenomenon against which No country is immune, whatever its political system and the dominant religion or belief system. Violence against women is a violation of human rights and a form of gender-based discrimination. Rooted in inequalities between men and women, it takes many forms. Estimates of the scale of the problem are alarming. The instruments put in place by the United Nations and the Council of Europe, including the latter's Istanbul Convention, to which the EU plans to accede, are benchmarks in efforts to combat violence against women. The EU is tackling the problem in various ways, but has no binding instrument designed to specifically to protect women from violence. Although there are similarities between national policies to combat violence against women, the EU member states have adopted different approaches to the problem. Abuse of physical, psychological, or social power leading to violence, including to sexual violence and rape, has many facets and can take place in many contexts, within a couple, in the professional context, in a religious context, in the world of sports, in the economic and political world. I will now explore some of these specific areas, such as domestic violence in the EU, sexual abuse of power, violence and rape by politicians, and sexual violence and rape in war times. And I will hereby highlight several aspects of the issue. First, domestic violence. It is in 2014 that the EU Fundamental Rights Agency published the most comprehensive survey on violence against women at the EU level, but a new report is in preparation with more recent statistics. But the statistics that we got from the 2014 survey show that it was based on they were based on the interviews of 42,000 women in all 28 then EU member states and of their experience of physical and sexual violence, sexual harassment. The survey data show that 1 woman in 3 had experienced some form of physical and or sexual violence since the age of 15 years. 1 in 10 women had experienced some form of sexual violence since the age of 15, and 1 in 20 had been raped. Over 1 in 5 women has experienced physical and or sexual violence from either a current or previous partner. At the most extreme end of the spectrum, Eurostat data on the number of reported incidents of intentional homicide, rape, and sexual assault show that in many member states, over half of all women murder victims are killed by an intimate partner, relative, or family member. According to a scientific study, there are approximately 3,500 domestic violence-related deaths in the EU every year. So, first, I will address the issue of sexual abuse of power, violence, and rape by politicians, because that happens. The first case concerns the former president, Yahya Jammeh of Gambia, a country of Western Africa. Mrs. Tufayalo, crowned in a beauty pageant in Gambia, was invited several times by former president of Gambia to the presidential palace under various false pretexts, and she was raped. It was not an isolated case, as Human Rights Watch published an excellent report about the multiple rapes perpetrated by Yahya Jammeh, so the former president of Gambia, during his presidency. After a new president was elected, he fled to a dictatorial country to avoid prosecution on a huge amount of counts. It took several years to Mrs. Tufayalo to come out of her silence, and she and her family did not want her honor to be publicly tarnished, a first obstacle. She now lives in Canada and fights for justice, but unfortunately without any success up to now. A second case concerns a prominent politician in Thailand. Prince Panichpatdi, he is 44 years old, a former deputy leader of the Democrat Party, the oldest party in the country, and is the son of a former deputy prime minister who was already accused of similar charges by two women in 2003 when he was living in London. The charges were later dropped, but there has been speculation that the alleged victims in London withdrew their complaints after they received financial compensation from the perpetrator of the sexual abuse. But he was again accused a few months ago of having raped 3 women in total impunity. Others are said to be about to lodge complaints. The last case is a minister in France who was accused of rape by 2 women several months ago, Damien Abad, now Minister for Solidarities and Persons with a Handicap, was first accused by one woman of sexual violence. And a few months later, another woman accused him of rape attempt in 2010, when he was a member of the European Parliament. Mr. Abad is himself physically handicapped. This example also shows that when a victim comes out of her silence, other victims also have the courage to raise their voices and to file a complaint. Sexual violence and rape in Russia's war on Ukraine is my next section. So another area of sexual abuse and extreme brutality is in wartime. We currently have a concrete example of it with Russia's war in and on Ukraine. A foreign occupation army uses its power to commit massive exactions, including sexual violence and rape. For 280 days now, allegations of sexual abuse and violence by Russian troops in Ukraine have been dramatically mounting. At this stage, it's difficult to have even a rough estimate of the number of cases due to several factors, despite the intense work of the International Criminal Court and UN bodies. It is already difficult for a victim in times of peace to reveal such a traumatizing experience. So you can imagine the mindset of such victims in wartime. It means that testimonies collected by the UN, the ICC, the Red Cross, etc., will only represent quite a tiny portion of the magnitude of the tragedy. A huge number of cases will fall through the cracks, as many women fled to EU countries, were displaced internally, were deported to Russia in unknown conditions. Moreover, the war is still raging in the occupied territories of Ukraine. The fraught nature of sexual atrocities, which are historically underreported, means that in Ukraine, it will be a long time before the full scale of the problem is clear. The small towns in the suburbs of Kiev that are already known to the world for the widespread killing of civilians, Bucha, Borodyanka, Irpin, and others, are haunted by tales of rape too. Ukrainian officials and activists have also heard many accounts of sexual atrocities from regions that remain under occupation today. In such conditions, collecting reliable data is extremely hard. In Ukrainian society, and especially in rural areas, sexual crimes are so stigmatized that victims fear being judged by their social environment and keep silent. The UN is currently involved in a lot of investigation and is quite sensitive to the issue. And I will drop a part of the longer paper that I had prepared to come to my conclusions. In conclusions, in such cases, impunity cannot and should not prevail, even if it takes years or decades to identify, hunt, and arrest the perpetrators of sexual violence and rape. And now about Taijimen and the elimination of violence against women. I would like to stress that Dr. Hong's teachings about the relations between men and women are based on equality, mutual respect, mutual trust and fidelity, transparency, responsibility, and non-violent settlements of domestic conflicts. Taijimen is not a patriarchal society in which men and boys would have a dominant position. Girls and boys, men and women are treated in the same way and have equal access to positions of responsibility in the movement. Taijimen is a microcosm and a laboratory where the UN principles for the elimination of violence against women are constantly being put in action. Their good practices are beneficial to Taiwanese society and to the image of the country, and they deserve to be highlighted. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Willy Fautré for giving us a staggering example and numbers and figures of this monstrosity, which is violence against women. I mean, all violence, of course, is awful everywhere, in every country, in every time. But when violence targets specific people, specific groups, or women as such, because they are women, because the role they have in society, they have in culture, the deep meaning, I don't want to go too much philosophical or even theological, but the deep meaning that women have throughout human history, that is even more unbearable. Thank you, Willy, for keeping our eye focused on this huge, awful problem. It is now my pleasure to pass the mic on to Mr. Alessandro Micarelli. He will pair the second session, as usual, of our webinar with DZ and testimonials. Mr. Micarelli is the president of the European Federation for Freedom of Belief in the UK. Alessandro, Mr. Micarelli, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Thank you very much, Marco, for passing me the mic for the second part of today's webinar. Thank you to Marco for your very interesting introduction. Thank you, Massimo, for your cultural assessment of the topic today. And thank you, Willy, for your own examination and further remarks on the topic of today's webinar. As Marco hinted at previously, this is typical of this seminar to follow a specific format, which sees a few scholars in the first part of the seminar assessing and covering some specific topics, and a second part of the webinar with testimonies from members of Taijimen giving their own testimonies and experiences about the good that happens in Taijimen and, unfortunately, the bad happening outside Taijimen in regards especially to the awful situation of what happened in Taiwan. As Marco and Willy said, Taijimen is kind of a witness of the good principles of the United Nations. So we all, as friends of Taiji-men, we fully support all initiatives that Taiji-men is carrying out and proposing, including also Dr. Ong's Global Prayer Initiative. Without further ado, we can pass on to the first witness, Miss May, who is a Taiji-men Daisy and works very hard at home. She is a housewife. Please, Miss May, the floor is yours.
To eliminate all kinds of violence with devotional prayers and kind hearts.
各位线上的全球好朋友，大家好。
Hello to all of you online good friends around the world. I'm May. Today is November 25th, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. I am honored to be here to discuss how to end violence and solve the Taiji-men case through the Global Prayer Day. November 25th is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women established by the United Nations in 1999. The date is based on the date of the 1960 assassination of the three Mirabal sisters in the Dominican Republic for opposing the then dictatorial ruler Rafael Trujillo. The killing were ordered by Rafael Trujillo. To commemorate the three, the United Nations has designated November 25th as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Any act of violence, whether it is violence inflicted on others, violence of words, or violence of power by those in power, should be stopped because violence not only causes permanent harm or loss but even ruins the life of the person who is persecuted. In 1994, I joined Taiji-men, a menpai of Qigong, martial arts and self-cultivation, by following the ancient rituals. My Shifu not only teaches his Dizzy the Qigong practice techniques to strengthen our bodies, but also teaches us from time to practice the ethical concepts of the 4 anchors and 8 virtues, and to be filial to our parents and loyal to our country. Taiji-men Shifu and Dizzy participate in various public welfare activities at our own expense. We have been invited many times to perform at the National Day celebration on the National Day of ROC. We have also visited 101 countries to promote the culture of love, peace and conscience under the leadership of Zhang Amenren, Dr. Hong Taozi. It is also because of this kind of teaching and nurturing that I know how to love myself and others and develop an optimistic and positive attitude towards life. It is surprising that such a fine organization, which has passed on Taiji culture and promoted national diplomacy, has been wrongly accused for 26 years due to false black letters and prosecutors' bias and smear in 1996. Despite the verdicts of not guilty and not owing taxes after 3 judicial trials, the National Taxation Bureau has continued to issue illegal tax bills under the wrong indictment, and even auctioned off Taiji-men's sacred land which intended for a self-cultivation center, and took it into state ownership. Such a fraud case in judicial and tax is caused by the government's legal and tax violence, which not only violates the constitutional protection of people's right to life and property and freedom of religion, but also tarnishes the international image of Taiwan, which claims to be a democratic country. This act is like the brutal plundering of an authoritarian system. Regarding the Taiji-men injustice tax case, the tax officer Shi Yusheng, who cooperated with the perjury at that time, testified before his death on his conscience, saying that the Taiji-men case was led by the then prosecutor Ho Quan-jen. The NTB issued illegal bills without investigation, and even forged documents under the lure of bonuses. After the first trial verdict of acquittal on September 25, 2003. The district court issued a letter on October 15 informing the Taipei NTB to officially lift the freeze on all the assets of the party. However, the then director of the Taipei NTB, Chang Xingho, still sent a letter to the Taipei Administrative Enforcement Office on October 20 requesting continued enforcement, and connived at his subordinates Chang Su-mei to alter and forge the date of the letter to October 15 by using correction liquid to cover up the fact that the court had lifted the freeze on the party's assets. Without the knowledge of the party concerned, the deposits and stocks were stolen and sold out. This is a very shameful forgery of official documents. However, no one was punished after the NTB was exposed by the judge for forging documents. Such injustice is outrageous. It is obvious that officials who hold public power but have no conscience will use policy violence to deal with the people. the people will always be the vulnerable ones who fail to have justice done. Many tax victims suffered so much that they even committed suicide. This surely is a warning sign of national depletion and political instability. This world is in crisis. The war between Russia and Ukraine is not yet over. COVID-19 epidemic is still ongoing. And mankind is now languishing in a chaotic environment. The world needs people to face themselves with conscience, to pray for everyone, so that the forces of good can gather to calm the arrogance of evil. I remember that in October 2001, a group of Taiji men brothers and sisters and I accompanied Dr. Hong to Japan to participate in the 8th World Cup International Martial Arts Championships. After a wonderful cultural show featuring traditional Chinese martial arts, we held a ceremony to ring the bell of world peace and love. A total of 6 Japanese Diet members rang the bell and expressed their wishes for peace. The VIPs on stage took a group photo holding the Kung Fu fan with the Chinese character, Wu, on it. Dr. Hong said that the highest level of martial arts is to stop fighting and promote goodness, and holding an open Kung Fu fan is to promote goodness, Shan, fan in Chinese, and he hoped that these congressmen would pass on the energy of goodness, Shan. At that time, they were about to enter the Hall of Congress the next day to discuss whether the Japanese self-defense forces would send troops to support the United States in the war against the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Afterwards, I learned that Japan did not send troops. It can be seen that a good thought can resolve a violent war. I am deeply impressed by such an example. On behalf of this, Dr. Hong Taozi, the Zhangmenren of Taiji Men, declared October 16th of this year as World Prayer Day in the hope that everyone will use their sincere and selfless hearts and sincere confessions to awaken the pure hearts of human beings. The good thoughts of all people will soothe the earth, so that the environment will be in harmony and stability, and the earth will be sustainable. From the 26-year-long Taiji Men tax case and various tax victim cases, we can see the greed of human hearts and the collapse of the policy system. The violence of state taxation has harmed the Zhangmenren, all the Taiji Men dizzy, and many innocent tax victims. It has not only depleted national resources, but has also hindered Taiji Men's efforts to bring peace to the country and the world. Therefore, all forms of persecution must be stopped immediately. We must call on everyone to treat each other with kindness and tolerance, and to implement human rights protection and respect in order to eliminate violence. We hope that more people will pray together with sincerity and activate their conscience to purify the atmosphere of the environment. And we believe that this will awaken those in power to admit their mistakes, to distinguish right from wrong, to make courageous and correct decisions, and to return the land of our Taiji Men sacred land as soon as possible. Only then will there be a chance to eliminate all kinds of violence, so that the world can be stable, and people can live a stable life. Now, I would like to invite you to sign the Declaration of World Prayer Day on the ForPal website. Thank you all.
Thank you very much to the first witness for your testimony and remarking the importance to sign the petition for the National Day of Prayer on the ForPal website. Before progressing next to the following witness, we now have a video, a nice song video by the Children of Heaven. So we have the video and then we move on with the next witness.
Piano Once upon a time, our ancestors passed down a legend. The world was in trouble then, just like the world today. Our world is facing many crises, natural disasters, wars, and epidemics. What can we do to save the world and change our destiny? Is trying to save ourselves the only option we have? If you could change yourself, you could change the world. The children of heaven are calling. How can we turn things around and save the world? All the answers are in the tale. In a quiet and peaceful paradise, a group of children accidentally let the 5 poisons sneak into their hearts. Greed made greedy pluck flowers from others. Hate made angry often fight with others. Ignorance made foolish quarrel over trivial matters and cursed others. Arrogance made arrogant talk behind others' backs. And doubt made doubtful scare people with mischiefs. God spoke to the children in a serious tone of voice.
Oh, my children. The laws of heaven are very strict. Look, the planet shining with blue light is called Earth, where you must reflect on yourselves, change yourselves for the better. So that when your hearts become pure, you will have the chance to return to heaven.
The children of heaven came to earth one by one. They found that it was a comfortable environment. Blue sky, green land, birds and flowers, everything was thriving. They believed that soon, they will be able to return to heaven and God. After some time, the children became lazy. The 5 poisons made their hearts lose their way. Greedy destroyed nature for her own selfish needs. Angry started a war and fought over territory. Ignorant allowed officials that were greedy for bonuses to levy taxes arbitrarily. Arrogant also started a fire. Doubtful brought about flooding that destroyed homes. These dark spirits gradually gathered into a demon with a ferocious face with horns on its head. He spat out a horrible virus as a killer weapon. The infected people crowded the hospital. Many of them lost their lives. The merciful God continued to appeal to people's conscience. As a result, people started to remember the bright treasure given by God, conscience with a beautiful luster. When they were quiet and began to listen to their inner voice, they realized that by following the guidance of their conscience, they could protect and calm their hearts. People started fixing their problems while doing good deeds to make up for their past mistakes. At last, the dark spirits on the demon were forced to vanish due to the lack of the 5 poisons. The earth got a chance to rest, and all living creatures could once again coexist in harmony. The children who had changed their thoughts and behaviors restored their purest and truest hearts and finally returned to heaven. Good and evil both reside in our hearts. It is conscience that enables us to distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad, as well as true and false. We are all children of heaven, deep down inside. The degradation of the human heart, caused by the 5 poisons, is the root of the consequences we see today. The only solution lies in our hearts. Only conscience can save oneself and allow one's soul to return to its pure and beautiful homeland.
Wani
Thank you for the lovely video, the nice song in the language of the indigenous of Taiwan, the Atayal people, and the nice song and the drawings by the kids of Taiji Men were very, very nice and inspiring. We can now move on to Miss Eva Mal, who is Executive Assistant and DC of Taiji Men, for your testimony. Please, Eva, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eva Mal, and I'm also a Taiji Men Dizi. Since I was a child, I have followed my Shifu, Dr. Hong, to cultivate my body and mind. And in addition to physical and mental transformation, Dr. Hong also taught his Dizi to care for the society, the nation, and the world. Dr. Hong devoted his life to promoting the Taiji Men's culture of peace with love and conscience, promoting the physical and mental health of the world, and visiting 5 continents to spread love and peace. So far, he has visited more than 300 cities in 101 countries. Through cultural exchanges, people of different genders, races, languages, and cultures can appreciate each other's culture and promote peace. In Taiji Men, the Taiji Men culture taught by Dr. Hong is more than martial arts or dance or etc., but a higher level of spiritual wisdom. Through cultural performances, we can express the purest feeling of the heart and soul, bringing each other closer and creating a connection of peace and mutual respect. And I have participated in many national and international cultural exchanges with Dr. Hong, my Shifu, through which I have gained a deep understanding of the importance of tolerance, conscience, love, and peace. Together, we can make the world a better place. And in 2017, I spent about a month in the United States and Europe as Dr. Hong led a World Love and Peace Cultural Goodwill Group to New York for the United Nations General Assembly, meeting with various European government officials and locals to share the culture of love and peace. Between September 24th, 2017 to October 6th, 2017, the World Love and Peace Cultural Goodwill Group went to 5 countries: Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. Besides visiting government departments and agencies to share our journey in promoting human rights, love and peace, and the movement of an era of conscience, and the experience of preserving precious cultures, we directly mingle with the crowd, interacted with them sincerely by means of cultural performances and singing. With a smile and a kind thought, we can cross the language barrier, and there is no distance between the hearts. At that time, I think Europe was already facing some economic problems, refugees, terrorist attacks, etc. And this year, there was even a Russia-Ukraine war. Even the most beautiful and romantic country could not escape the destruction of human violence. And whether it was a meeting with Deputy Chairman of the Committee for External Relations of St. Petersburg, City Council of Riga, Latvia's capital, or the Ministry of Culture of Latvia, other officials, or other key persons, Dr. Hong will share with them these words of wisdom. With good culture comes good education. With good education comes good economy. Only by promoting a culture of love and peace through the guidance of conscience, the world can develop sustainably and humanity can prosper in peace. Although the war between Russia and Ukraine has been going on since February this year, I, after visiting Russia, always believed that most of the Russian people are very eager for peace, and of course, no one wants to live in violence. So our visit was to bring the philosophy of peace to Europe and do our part in the changing world situation. In 2018, Islamic educational, scientific, and cultural organization named Bahraini city of Al Muharraq as the 2018 Capital of Islamic Culture in Bahrain held a year-long grand event. In November of the same year, Taijimen Shifu and Dizi were invited by Bahrain and received by His Royal Highness Prince Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa, Prime Minister of Bahrain, and participated in the closing ceremony of the celebration of Muharraq as the capital of Islamic culture for 2018 at the Bahrain National Theater. Total of 44 United Nations members and 14 non-government organizations attend the ceremony. We demonstrated the balance of strength and softness in martial arts with the peacock dance and other martial arts performances. The Taijimen culture, full of love and peace, deeply attracted every guest. The Deputy Prime Minister of Bahrain rang the bell of peace, praying to heaven for love and peace, and wish year 2019 a year of peace. So the above of just a few of the anecdotes I have participated in. For so many years, Dr. Hong has led his Dizi to promote love and peace and human rights around the world. But in our own country, Taiwan, we have been subjected to over 26 years of persecutions disguised in legal and tax system. Unscrupulous prosecutor and tax officials have worked together to create fabricated tax cases to persecute Taijimen Shifu and Dizi. The court has finally returned justice to us with non-guilty verdicts and owed no tax in all 3 hearings. The state also provides compensation for unjust imprisonment. And also the control yuan took the initiative to investigate the case where the prosecutor was involved in 8 major violations, and the National Taxation Bureau was involved in 7 major violations. And Taijimen won 18 times in the appeals committee and the administrative court. For the past 26 years, we have exhausted all channels of petitions, but have not been able to gain justice. Taijimen Dizi are protesting around the world, hoping to tell the Taiwanese government through international power that this fabricated case must be rectified immediately, and that the officials who violate the law must be held accountable so that unscrupulous officials do not continue to harm the people and hurt Taiwan's international image. In today's forum, to commemorate the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, I was struck by the fact that conscience is the foundation of mutual respect and love among human beings, and the foundation of world peace. Violence in any form should not exist in this world. I'm here today to participate in this forum because I want to that the international community know that the people of Taiwan are being persecuted for their legal taxation and human rights and need your help. I hereby call upon the Taiwanese government to protect the freedom of belief and human rights, immediately vindicate the unjust tax case of the Taijimen, and return Taijimen its land intended for self-cultivation, and also call on the Taiwanese government to address the issue of abusive illegal taxation and fulfill the reform. Countries around the world should, through friendship and cooperation, help and share with each other and jointly discuss the current life or death issues, including the Russian-Ukraine war, food shortages, climate change, COVID-19, human rights, and humanitarian aid. In the face of these unprecedented crises and challenges, A fundamental approach is to promote the solidarity among all human beings, and the simplest and most direct way to do this is through conscience. Let us protect peace, love, and a sustainable future for human rights with conscience and love. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, for your very interesting presentation, giving your personal, sharing your personal experience. Thank you very much. We now have a third witness, Mr. Eloy. Mr. Eloy is an international sales representative and again, a DC of Taizhimen. Mr. Eloy, the floor is yours for your testimony, please.
Now I speak. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm honored to participate in the United Nations International Day to End Violence Against Women (IDAW) Forum on Ending State Violence for Justice and Equality. I would like to share the related news about the mafia girlfriend first. If you had heard about the news, please let me make a brief introduction about it. In the Mexican state of Sinaloa, because of the influence of the gangster in the state and the lack of stable governance for a long time, the gangster had been able to take control of the area, and the turn what could be cultivated into drug to satisfy their economic needs. Besides, the local women also had been affected, so they are looking forward to be a gangster's girlfriend. Becoming a monster girlfriend can change their destiny. However, it's not an easy task, and many young girls lost their life in the process of transformation. The main reason why this is regrettable because its government is corrupt and doesn't take an action role in managing this area, allowing this dark force to take advantage of the situation. It is really a matter of collective power to put things right. Negative influence, such as a Sinaloa girlfriend in Mexico, are present in our daily life all the time. It may not be the visible violence of persecution, but the invisible but more serious attack of repression. All human beings are born equal and endowed with human rights, and all truths are based on respect for international law. I had the privilege of attending the 23rd International Conference of Global Chief Justice in Lucknow, India, from November 17th to November 22nd, with more than 260 world leaders from more than 60 countries, including Chief Justice, Head of State, Speaker of the Parliament, Ministry of the Justice, Foreign Affairs, and Education. I hope we can discuss the test injustice case with judges from different countries. Also, I can follow the example of all the justice. For all the just, it's our hope to discuss with the judge of various countries the unjust taxation case of Taizhimen, which we are familiar with. I was impressed to have the opportunity to speak with Ms. Adriana, the president of FLAM, Federation of the Justice in Latin America. About this case, that case left the world in a state of shock. I was very impressed when Ms. Adriana and I said the Taizhimen test case was a very important reference for the world. And the world needs to be learned from it. It is because the tolerance of the faith and religion is the only way to make the countries prosperous and peaceful. And it is physiological to attack the religion and the faith through tax violence because those in power lack tolerance of human rights, religion, and faith culture. For the Mexican government, the reduction to face the regrettable situation is due to their indifference to the right of these Mexican girls to live. and they believe that the problem can be resolved by solving the problem of gesture. In the Taijimen test injustice case, the law enforcement didn't have the concept of human rights and abused their power illegally, creating something out of nothing. To those in power, even though they know the truth, as long as they can do enough superficial work, this law enforcement against agents can decide themselves and others in their own comfort zone. Because those who know the truth about this unjust case were wrong. Anyone who knows the truth knows the brief of this unjust case was a ridiculous farce, and everything from the beginning to the present is a lie. In this farce, the main protestant, prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren, a flawed prosecutor who had violated the law, continued to satisfy his ego and continued to direct his own show. His farce had led to many bloody and injustice incidents, and many families had been disrupted by his abuse farce. In particular, the deeds of Taijimen have been subjected to tragic family tragedy in the face of the trumped-up chance charge in the society. How is such a prosecutor different from those Mexican gangsters? Because of the government failure to govern, such evil things are allowed to manifest themselves in our real environment. Ms. Adriana also mentioned that it's a very difficult case to resolve because it's also a political case. Because only when the people in power understand the truth can they really solve the problem. I was really moved by the fact that the prosecuted people in the Taijimen case, following the spirit of the Mahatma Gandhi, quest for truth and given them wandering and unrepentant government another chance to face the truth through the rational and non-violent means and through particularly action of love and peace. However, all we can see that these government entities, blind by profit, only seek the weak for their own self-gratification, which is why these women were treated with rudely by this police officer, and why the inhuman and illegally ignoration of the volunteer mother, named Huang, took place. Politics is the responsibility of managing the affair of the people and maintaining a peaceful life for the people. It has nothing to do with what we perceive as party affiliation, but rather the awakening of all the people. It's a awakening of all the people to understand what is right and wrong, what will lead to real solution to the Taijimen injustice and the taxation case that has taken so many years. It also reminded me of what Ms. Adriana said to me, that nothing will ever change. As long as attitudes are different, then everything will be different. Therefore, I hope on the United Nations International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, I can call on these government agents who are indulging in self-direct, abusing, and unconstitutional act to honestly face their mistake, sincerely confess their absurd act, and learn to tolerate different religion and freedom of worship, so we can work together to make Taiwan a human right-based nation and a rich and strong one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eloy. And we all are here for the same reason, to make it sure that Taiwan is a country where human rights are fully complied with, and all the human rights, the international human rights provisions are respected, and people's lives are also respected accordingly. Thank you very much for your presentation. And we can now move on to the next testimony by Miss Ariel Chan. Miss Ariel Chan is a DZ of Taijimen and a system analyst. Please, Ariel, the floor is yours.
Hello, moderator and online friends. Today, can you hear me? Okay.
Perfectly, yeah.
Moderator and online friends. Today, November 25th, is the United Nations Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. According to the World Health Organization, 1/3 of women worldwide have experienced physical and sexual violence. It is because of the selfishness and greed of human nature that discrimination and violence against others are caused, and everyone is deprived of the right to equality and freedom. In Taiwan, we can also see that same law enforcement officers who hold public power disregard the legitimacy of law enforcement and violate the basic freedoms and human rights guaranteed by the Constitution because of their pursuit of personal performance and reward. On the morning of April 22nd, 2021, a music teacher, Miss Jan, who teaches African drums,
Looks like there is an issue with internet. I'm trying to get the connection back. Let's see what happens. Let's wait. I can see there is connection on our side, but maybe a general issue with Zoom, maybe. So let's try and wait, and then we see. Are you still with us? Can you try? Hello? Yeah, you're back on. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. It's internet, you know, technology. Please.
Okay. On the morning of April 22nd, 2021, a music teacher, Miss Jan, who teaches African drums, was on her way to class when a police officer saw her with a thin face and a nervous look and subjectively thought she was suspected of committing a crime and conducted an interrogation. When Miss Jan refused to check the police officers for unreasonable reasons, she was pinned to the ground and handcuffed by the police with Osotogari and brought back to the police station. The prosecutor later found that the police officer's interrogation was not in accordance with the law on the exercise of police powers and that the arrest was unlawful when Miss Jan was not suspected of obstructing public service, which is a crime of obstructing freedom under the guise of official duties. In addition of the case of Jan's teacher mentioned earlier, the Taijimen case, which has attracted a global attention, is a landmark case of human rights violation. The case was ruled innocent of tax debt by the Supreme Court of Taiwan long ago, and was awarded compensation for wrongful imprisonment by the state. but the state administration could still ignore the court's ruling. And on August 21st, 2020, the land on which Taijimen expected to build a practice facility for Dizi was illegally and forcibly auctioned off and finally taken into state ownership. According to the information, there are bonuses for the tax bills issued by the Internal Revenue Service and bonuses for the case enforced by the Administrative Enforcement Agency. And there is an official document from the AEA showing that the bonus was already being calculated 6 months before the Taijimen case was enforced. As early as 2003, 163 members of the legislature, including Zhu Xingyu, said that tax officials are all public employees who receive a big salary, and it is their duty to carry out tax audits and other related work. And it seems improper to receive bonuses. The proposal was repealed on the ground that it was not appropriate to receive the bonus. Instead, the Ministry of Finance continued to budget for tax bonus. In a speech at Suzhou University, NTB Commissioner Lin Zhongyuan said that there are bonuses up to 4,800,000. It is clear that tax incentive payments have always existed in disguise. On September 19th, 2020, when a volunteer of the Alliance of Legal Tax Reform was quietly holding a sign on the roadside, the police surround the scene with a group of nearly 20 people to conduct an interrogation. After receiving a phone call, the 60-year-old volunteer's mother, named Huang, was illegally taken back to the police station as a current offender without being informed of the charge. And after a 6-hour overnight investigation, she was transferred to the Hsinchu District Prosecutor's Office for a retrial without her signature and was ruled to her residence restricted. She recalls, in a state of shock, the police also threatened to arrest her son if she did not confess to the crime. Then she fainted and sent to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed her with acute stress syndrome, which left her physically and emotionally traumatized and unable to take care of herself for quite some time. The Zhubei incident is like the way prosecutor Hou Kuanren fabricated the fake case of Taijimen 26 years ago. First, the persons were first taken into custody to obtain a confession, and then she used the news media to smear Taijimen with false accusations, and then try to dismantle Taijimen. The police in the Zhubei case took confessions from people and then issued a press release to smear the Alliance for Legal Reform in order to create a chilling effect and cover up the government's crimes. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, endowed with reason and conscience, and should be treated in a spirit of brotherhood. The Taijimen case and the Zhubei instance highlights the serious regressions of human rights in Taiwan, which the government should reflect and improve immediately. Nowadays, the world is in turmoil and unrest, and it is difficult to stabilize people's hearts. On October 16 of this year, Taijimen held the Conscience Illuminating the World global praise for the love and peace, and the people from 108 countries around the world responded by praying for themselves, their families, and the world. When my mind is in a very pure state, I will hear the voice of my inner conscience, which will tell me to look at everything with a heart full of compassion and mercy. I also believe that our good thoughts will help us to make every decision with empathy, tolerance, and a heart to benefit all people. When each of us moves in this direction, we will become a powerful force for the realization for freedom and human rights, so that we can return to a peaceful world soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ariel. Despite the small technical problem, everything has gone perfect. Yeah, we all wish a peaceful world. That's the reason why we all are here, and that's the reason why we are supporting Taijimen. And the peace can also start from inside ourselves. We have now one more Taijimen DC and then one more testimony. The next witness is Miss Whitney Low, who is a government employee and a DC of Taijimen. Please, Whitney, the floor is yours.
Hello, hosts, experts, and scholars, and friends online. My name is Whitney Low, and I am a Taijimen Dizi for the past 28 years. I have been practicing Taijimen Qigong when I was younger. I was frail and frequently fell ill. Fortunately, my parents brought our entire family to Taijimen to cultivate our body and mind when I was 8 years old. My body became healthier as a result of my Qigong practice. Dr. Hong Daozi, my Shifu, told us the wisdom of being a person and doing things. I grew up in an environment full of positive energy and love, and I became cheerful and optimistic as a result. My Shifu instilled in his deeds a concern for society, country, and the world, and he is dedicated to promoting the conscious culture of love and peace in Taijimen and improving the world's physical and mental health. I also have the opportunity to participate in a variety of public welfare activities for love and peace, both at home and abroad, which not only broaden my horizons, but also add value to my life. And the culture built on conscience and love is the foundation of global peace and sustainability. I recall following my Shifu to Rio, Brazil in June 2012 to attend the 2012 United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, Rule 20 plus, as well as 10 of thousands of groups, 45,381 participants from 188 countries around the world were person to search for key solutions to global sustainable development. We convey the power of kindness and the positive energy through cultural performance and ring the bell of world peace and love, and encouraging leaders with decision-making power and influence to drive people to understand and respect each other, and to practice love and peace together. What struck me the most was Costa Rican President Laura Chinchilla Miranda ring the peace bell and declaring in an interview, "My country has always been committed to peace. We abolished the army 60 years ago because we do not want the world to be at war. To bring peace to our people and their families, we have also developed a very important social policy in collaboration with other world leaders for a peaceful world. The decision of the head of state affects the lives and deaths of tens of millions of people. I sense President Laura Chinchilla Miranda's love for the people and the desire for peace for her wish. People can only live happily if the government put the people first, govern with conscience, and implement substantive justice. My shifu told me to distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad, and to act according to my conscience as I grew up in Taijumen. I am currently employed as a government employee in a government agency. Knowing that I wield public power, I must maintain the conscience to administer the law and respect human rights. At work, I can assess its procedural and rationality in a variety of ways. I hope the public office I hold will assist the people and the country in growing and progressing together. After all, it is easy for those in positions of public power to enforce the law or issue a fine. But when government employees misuse their authority, it is not done in accordance with the law. The harm done to the people is irreparable. Well, I was using public power to help people. I was also subjected to public power persecution. Taijumen has been persecuted for human rights and religious freedom by illegal birthright for the past 26 years. Prosecutors illegally investigated Taijumen at the time. The false witnesses were discovered to produce false evidence, and the National Taxation Bureau imposed tax on Taijumen based on the false content of the indictment without any legal effect. Even after the third judicial ruling confirmed Taijumen's innocence of any tax debt, and the contrarian in the debt 7 points for rectification from National Taxation Bureau. The NTB made no attempt to correct them. Former contrarian member Qian Ninghuizhen says that with each indication, the NTB simply said, we made a mistake. This demonstrates the NTB knew that case was wrong from the beginning, yet did not to correct it, and even collaborate with the administrative enforcement agency to illegally enforce the law and reclaim Taijumen's cultivation land. My shifu, On the other hand, is not afraid of public persecution and has encouraged us to continue doing the right thing for the past 26 years. This is not only to restore the innocence and the justice of Taiji mischief and deeds, but also to ensure that similar human persecution does not occur again. Everything should be based on conscience, and the facts should be true for the fairness and the justice of the country judicial and the tax laws. So people can live happily, and the country that is democratic, ruled by law, and respect human rights. Taiji Man held event global prayers for love and peace, conscience illuminating the world on October 16 this year. It was organized by over 500 major religions and non-governmental organizations in the hopes of bringing everyone's kind and good soul together to pray for world. I become a big peacock and spread blessing with the dragon during this global blessing event. The peacock spirit is of poison and spit out fragrance, transforming all the bad things you see and hear into good and sending it out to the people around you. This kind of mind and spirit wash and purify my own heart while I was dancing the peacock dance. I also keep a positive attitude, help to inspire those around me to purify the soul and the environment together, and praying for the world's safety and peace. Today is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which reminds countries of their responsibility to eliminate violence against women, prioritize gender equality, and put an end to violence against women and girls. The world, on the other hand, is made of people from various countries, races, cultures, religions, genders, and ages. To achieve global sustainable development, citizens must collaborate, respect human rights, and practice conscience. I am fully aware that conscience is the foundation of everything. The fundamental way to keep world peace is for everyone to find his or her pure heart, pray with conscience, and sincerely to do good and correct his or her mistakes. Today, the human living environment is rapidly deteriorating. We invite everyone to participate in World Prayer Day by praying for ourselves, others, and the world as a group. The kindness you and I have shown will create a butterfly effect. We hope the world will end. The epidemic will be contained, and the world will be safe. Turn the world around with love and light up the world with hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Whitney. Thank you also for your enthusiasm. Wishing everyone they can find peace from their own art, because everything starts from ourselves. We cannot expect others to change if we don't change ourselves and if we don't help others change. Thank you very much, Whitney. Now, as always in our webinars, we have conclusions, remarks, and today's panelist for the conclusion is Mr. Hans Knott, who is the president of the Gerard Knott Foundation for Freedom of Religion or Belief. Please, Hans, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alex, very much. And thanks for all who have participated in today's session regarding the elimination of violence against women and solving the Taiji Men case. We deplore how the Taiwan tax authorities have been abusing their powers against the Taiji Men for the past 26 years, more than a quarter of a century. One wonders how governments could let this happen. We in particular thank the Center for Studies on New Religions, as well as Human Rights Without Frontiers. We've heard their distinguished experts speak about the topic today, as well as the deplorable testimonies of victims. The video that we have seen and the one that we will see clarify even more. And much can and should be said, but let me conclude with just a few remarks. Increasingly, the world is being confronted with the phenomenon of violence against women and girls. Only 5 years ago, we heard on the news the Me Too movement, with women openly complaining against sexual intimidation. Consequently, people are more aware and some perpetrators are brought to justice. But exploitation of women is broader than sexual intimidation and has been an issue ever since recorded history. By calling for the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women annually on November 25th, the United Nations has started a global campaign. And while women in particular are the victims by far, it is part of a call for a day of gender equality, a day for activism against gender-based violence. Throughout the world, we continue to see gender-based violence and the threat of gender-based violence amplified when an emergency hits. The US government, for example, has long recognized the increased prevalence and risk of gender-based violence, particularly targeted at women and girls when disasters or conflicts strike. The Sustainable Development Goal number 5 charges nation states to, quote, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. One element requiring attention is gender-based violence, which continues to be a serious threat, while most often referring to violence in context of sexual assault, domestic violence, and intimate partner violence, and human trafficking. Anthropologists have recently called up for an expanded understanding of gender-based violence that explores the ways in which gender creates vulnerability and susceptibility. In the United States, gender equality has been diminishing throughout its history, and significant advancements towards equality have been made, mostly in the early 1900s. However, despite this progress, gender inequality in the United States continues to persist in many forms, including the disparity of women's political representation and participation, occupational segregation, and the unequal distribution of household labor. The alleviation of gender inequality has been a goal for several major pieces of legislation since the 1920s and continues to be to the present day. As of 2021, the World Economic Forum ranks the United States 30th in terms of gender inequality out of 149 nations. A recent study by Heather Havkla demonstrates that school-age girls as young as 11 have already normalized experiences of sexual violence and assault, particularly in the school setting. Early childhood would therefore seem to be a key period to address healthy, intimate relationships and respect for sexual and bodily autonomy. Research demonstrates that age-appropriate and frank anti-violence and sexual health curriculum are effective in promoting sexual health and preventing pregnancy, but the culturally fraught nature of sex education debates in the US makes it difficult to implement in many school districts. In South Asia, 4 elements on violence against women can be noted. Number 1, violence against women in South Asia is one of the deadliest forms of violence in Asia, yet it is dramatically overlooked by governments and policymakers. Number 2, most countries in Asia have laws against domestic violence, but nearly all laws exclude unmarried intimate partners. Number 3, Limited awareness, capacity, and lack of political hinder women against legal protection. Laws against domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence are just a starting point. And number 4, violence against women and girls extend throughout the life cycle. Excess child mortality rates and deep-rooted bias against girls often begin in the womb. Gender biases within the household have implications on health and education outcomes, with girls and women often faring worse than boys and men on relevant indicators. One of the most egregious forms of violence against girls is child marriage. South Asia sees the highest rates of child marriage, which is in turn associated with lower education outcomes, inferior employment opportunities, higher rates of domestic violence. Globally, including Asia, legal protections against child marriage are limited, and many countries have adopted 18 as the legal age for marriage, still allow exceptions in cases of parental or judicial consent. In China, in 2019, China ranked 39 out of 189 countries on the United Nations Development Programme's Gender Inequality Index. Based on a survey implemented in the country in central China, the researchers found it is common for women to experience gender-based violence, especially violence at the hands of intimate partners. About half the men surveyed reported inflicting physical or sexual violence on their female partners. 1 in 5 men reported having raped a partner or non-partner woman. The physical, mental, and reproductive health of the female and male respondents were found to be significantly associated with women's victimization and men's perpetration of intimate partner violence. Gender-based violence, including intimate partner violence, is a construction of the social ecological system. 4 elements that are key to the hegemonic masculinity are identified: male decision-making, male reputation, violence, and heterosexuality. By posting the 4 elements as standards that define a real man, the domination of men over women is naturalized and legitimized. It is necessary to foster other non-violent and more equitable masculinities. In Latin America, it has been adopted a twofold approach to tackling gender violence, especially the creation of the only regional commitment to eradication gender violence, which clearly establishes the responsibilities of states to safeguard women's rights. Second, countries in the region have implemented a range of mechanisms at the national level to tackle specific forms of violence, such as domestic violence and femicide laws, the creation of gender observatories, as well as programs for building safer cities for women. In the EU, not forgetting other unnamed regions in my presentation, quote, the goal of the Union, where men and women, girls and boys in all their diversity are free to pursue their chosen path of life, have equal opportunities to thrive, and can equally participate in and lead our European society. The key objective, Europe writes, are ending gender-based violence, challenging gender stereotypes, closing gender gaps in the labor market, achieving equal participation across different sectors of the economy, addressing the gender pay and pension gaps, closing the gender care gap, and achieving gender balance in decision-making and in politics. And I can continue the details of the European Union as they try to implement these, but it was only after 10 years of negotiations that the directive has finally adopted in 22nd November 2022. Sorry for the lapse here. In conclusion, due to special programs, legislation, and media attention, violence against women is seen as a downtrend. Much of the problem lies at the culturally defined values of practices. Cultures in which people are raised and in which they live play a dominant role in how people define the value of women and men. It is for that reason that we strongly advise to keep raising awareness of the problem. As Dr. Intervinia has already pointed out, a call for help from above must be part of the solution. Whether we believe in an intelligent being, divine being, or in nature, practically all humans are aware that we as individuals are unable to solve the problem by ourselves. By defining the concept of prayer as a legal help, as a plea to help to higher powers, we can use Dr. Hong's proposal to use March 3rd, 2023 as a wise and prudent part of the solution. It will be an opportunity to do as Dr. Intervinia expressed, to pick up the golden chain of Rembrandt's painting. We certainly endorse that cry for help to tackle man-made issue of violence against women, as well as other forms of unfair discrimination, including the abuse of tax authorities against the vulnerable. Let's just watch and see the last video for clarification. I yield the floor.
From November 15 to 22, 2022, the Faux Culture Goodwill Group participated in the 23rd International Conference of Chief Justices of the World in New Delhi and Lucknow, India, for the 11th time. Over the years, they've been invited 13 times. This time, the delegation was composed of representatives from 6 organizations: Taijimen Culture and Education Foundation, the ECOSOC accredited NGO Association of World Citizens, the Federation of World Peace and Love, the Taijimen Qigong Academy, the Dr. Hong Daozi Culture and Education Foundation, and the Ho Mei Charity Foundation. This year's delegation had the most participants. Under Dr. Hong's leadership, 62 volunteers participated, the eldest being nearly 80 years old and the youngest only 9 years old. The volunteers put forth a lot of time and effort and produced a very fruitful result. On November 19, Dr. Hong proclaimed the declaration of World Day of the Power of Hope and promoted the declaration of World Prayer Day and the declaration of International Day of Conscience at the same time. As of today, the declaration of World Prayer Day has been signed by people from 126 countries, up from 108 nations. On this trip, FOPAL hosted a bell-ringing ceremony, a session of the World Leader Summit of Love and Peace, and a youth forum, presented 7 cultural performances, joined a parade, and visited a school. On the morning of November 19, 4 distinguished guests rang the bell at the opening ceremony of the conference. His Excellency Mr. Prithviraj Singh Rupin, President of the Republic of Mauritius, His Excellency Sir Ronnie Ariel Lawrence Williams, Governor General of Antigua and Barbuda, Dr. Bartik Gandhi, the founder and director of City Montessori School, and Mr. Radhan Chandra Gupta, the General Secretary of City Montessori School. The latter two have dedicated their lives to education and peace in the world. Dr. Hong also proclaimed September 23rd as the World Day of the Power of Hope to encourage everyone to change the world through the power of goodwill. On the afternoon of November 19, His Excellency Dr. Pakalitha Bhimo Sisili, former Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Lesotho, who rang the bell in India in 2017, and His Excellency Mr. Emil Constantinescu, former President of Romania, who rang the bell in Turkey this year, joined the World Leaders Summit of Love and Peace to express their views and feelings on the theme of the summit, taking action of conscience for love and peace. This day happened to be the President Constantinescu's birthday. To honor the special occasion, Fopal's orchestra played a happy birthday song, and a Chinese opera song was also presented to express Fopal's most sincere wishes to him and to the other audience members. At the Youth Forum held on November 20th, 4 young volunteers shared their hopes for the world from the perspective of future world owners and shared how they personally put their ideas into practice to bring hope to the world. 2 students from the City Montessori School were invited to share their hopes for the future through a good exchange of love and peace. The forum also featured 2 international dignitaries, Honorable Justice Antoine Kessia M.B. Mindois, International Criminal Court Hague, the Netherlands, and the president of FLAM and the Costa Rican Association of Judges, Adriana Oruku Travaria, who shared their views and visions on the theme of the forum toward a world of peace and conscience. Over the years, global leaders have made significant contributions to the world for love and peace. In recognition of their efforts, Fopal presented important awards to several important leaders during this trip to India, including the Lifetime Achievement Award to former Romanian President, His Excellency Mr. Emil Constantinescu, the World Peace Spirituality Award to former Prime Minister of Lesotho, His Excellency Dr. Pakalitha Bhimo Sisili, and the World Cultural Contribution Award to former Haitian Prime Minister, His Excellency Mr. Jean Henry Sient. Dr. Bartik Gandhi, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi's wife, was awarded the World Education Contribution Award, and Professor Geeta Gandhi Kingdon, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi's daughter, was presented with the Key to the Heart, a symbol of wisdom and educational legacy. This time, special gifts were also presented to 2 important Indian heads of states, including the Compass Clock of Conscience symbolizes that everyone is encouraged to act with conscience at all times. On behalf of Indian President, Her Excellency Mrs. Draupadi Murmu, her representatives were presented with a clock. On the other hand, a glazed artwork was presented to the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, His Excellency Yogi Adityanath, to commemorate the friendship between him and Dr. Hong and to encourage every leader to govern with conscience. Uttar Pradesh is the most populous and the second largest province in India. The governor's administration has an impact on the well-being of its 200 million people, making the exchange based on conscience and love between the 2 wise men all the more important. The delegation brought 3 important decorations: decoration of World Prayer Day, decoration of International Day of Conscience, and decoration of the Power of Hope Day to India, which were signed by world leaders, justices, and judges, as well as other distinguished guests from various countries. With the pandemic still ongoing, this trip was very challenging. As Dr. Hong stated, doing the right thing in today's world requires more effort in order to bring love, peace, and hope to India this time. The volunteers overcame numerous obstacles and flew thousands of miles to this land. The Fopal Culture Goodwill Group is like a boat full of love under the guidance of the compassionate and experienced captain, Dr. Hong. They surmount the hurdles, break through the rough waves, and lead global citizens to a new era of love and peace.
Amazing as always, nice music, nice performance, amazing video, and I would just like to go back to the panel if anyone wants to say anything. Marco, maybe I took the floor. You should have said something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. And sorry for my awful cold, but I'm sure you can get my words, and my words are not very important after all, and after all what we heard today. Let's remember that when we celebrate, we underline this day of observance with our webinars. It's not just blah blah blah. We're not just talking. We're not just speaking. We're not just showing up in a nice webinar. We are very committed to the goal that inspires us and unites us, and this is why we're all here. I do thank all the speakers and panelists and testimonials today for what they brought. It's always very enriching. It's always very important to learn more and more. Again, I hope this is not just the last time we speak about these things and not just speaking. We need to do something, and I think we said it in many different and interesting ways. Prayers is the fuel that can get us to these important things. We may understand prayers in different ways, but the core question unites us. So again, thank you, everyone.
Massimo, I know you want to say something.
Yes, I believe it is important that we do something, as Marco said, and we will have still the possibility for those of us who didn't to go to the FOPAL website, that's the Federation of World Peace and Love, and sign the declaration of the World Prayer Day. So I would urge those who didn't yet to endorse the World Prayer Day. And surely we will continue this conversation about the World Prayer Day in the next activities we will have. And so I believe that we should really give a chance to the World Prayer Day. And it is not easy because, as I said in the past, similar proposals coming from the Christian, and I will add from the Hindu world, have not been endorsed at the United Nations, saying prayer is something confessional or sectarian, and so those who are not Christian, who are not Hindus, may even be offended by a World Prayer Day. So that's why, by rooting my speech in the myth of the golden chain, which has a Christian version, but also in the Renaissance and before the non-Christian version, I try to explain that prayer may also be understood in a non-sectarian way, and people can pray in a parallel way. Christians will pray God, and the Buddhist would attune to the ground, or Taoist would attune to the ground or beings, and non-believers can still attune to nature and contemplate the unity of the universe, which is intrinsically against violence. So I believe that this message should be promoted. And so I would say that in the next webinar, which is due on December 10, we should go on with our promotion of day of world peace because it's something which surely cannot be achieved overnight. And as I said, I believe that it can be more difficult than other international days, but still I believe that we can do something and should not give up in promoting the World Prayer Day. Thank you. And I want, in conclusion, I want to remind all of you that December 10 is a very important day. Also for the Taiji Men case is the World Human Rights Day. And so I hope that we can have another great webinar on December 10.
What will be the official title of the webinar on that day?
Well, we'll find one, but it can be something like protecting the human rights of Taiji men and everybody else. So that's the concept. And we will find a nice formula.
Okay. And is there another webinar planned in December after the 10th?
I believe there is I believe it's the 20th of December. Yes, it's the 20th of December, which is International Human Solidarity Day. And so that's, I have 2 webinars in December as in the other months. Yes.
Noting that in my agenda. Solidarity Day. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.